This podcast is also part of a pod course, which is available for credit on speechtherapypd.com. All you need to do is register for the course, complete the requirements, and you will receive credit. Speechtherapypd.com is a video continuing education company, a certified ASHA CE provider.
First Bite sure does love some freebies, and I grew up loving some coupons. That's my kinfolk's way of saying coupons. I can't even say it correctly. And so to start the new year off right, we wanted to do a little give back. So if you head on over to speechtherapypd.com and enter the code FIRSTBITE, not to be confused with the autocorrect of Frostbite, well, then you will find a fabulous $10 off coupon for an annual subscription. That will give you access to all of the 1 to 3 hour webinar courses, as well as all the First Bite pod courses for CEUs for an annual membership of only $79. But hey, do you want more? Don't you love that cheesy sales line? I love that cheesy sales line. Okay, well, if you do, you can use that same coupon, First Bite, and access all of the courses on speechtherapypd.com's website for a fabulous deal of $179 a year. Whoop, whoop. So don't forget, plug in the coupon First Bite when you check out at the speechtherapypd.com website. Happy listening, y'all.
Hi, it's Erin. I'm your regular co-host of First Bite. First of all, I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in and listening to First Bite. We've been incredibly encouraged and excited by the feedback we've received and are looking forward to the future. In the meantime, if you've been enjoying First Bite, please take a moment, maybe pause your device to subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening. This podcast started out as a small idea to bring convenient, tangible resources to SLPs and other professionals, and we value your feedback more than anything. Leaving those reviews truly helps us out. Enjoy the episode and thanks for listening.
Hi, I hope that y'all have been enjoying First Bite as much as I've been enjoying making this and doing all the research behind the scenes. I'd love to meet with y'all live, and I have some upcoming lecture tours that you can catch me at. And I just wanted to share a little bit in advance, so that way you can get it on your calendars. So on April 5th, 2019, I will be at the Arizona Speech Hearing Association in Phoenix, and their conference this year is at the Sheraton Crescent Hotel. And on that Friday, I'll be presenting 3 lectures all around early intervention and pediatric feeding and swallowing. And the following weekend, I'll be at the Minnesota Speech Hearing Association in Bloomington, Minnesota, and I'll be presenting on Friday and Saturday, April 12th and 13th of 2019. And their conference this year is at the Hyatt Regency. So please be sure to stop by and say hi if you're out in Phoenix and or a week later in Bloomington, Minnesota. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to go from hot to cold in about a week's time frame. But whoop, whoop, I will see y'all in the spring. Hi, folks, and welcome to First Bite. Fed, fun, functional resources for the pediatric clinician. I am your host on this nerd venture, Michelle Dawson, MS, CCC, SLP, the All Things Peds SLP. I am a colleague in the trenches of home health early intervention, right there with you. I run my own private practice, Heartwood Speech Therapy, in Coletown, South Carolina, and guest lecture nationwide on best practices for early intervention for the medically fragile child. First Bite's mission is short and sweet, to bring light and hope to the world for the pediatric clinician, parent, or advocate. In this podcast, we cover everything from AAC to breastfeeding, best practice for running a private practice, and all the nitty-gritty details involving feeding and swallowing by interviewing the subject matter experts themselves. We bring the data to you. Every 4th episode, I am joined by the lovely Erin Forward, MSP, CF, SLP, a Yankee transplant who actually inspired this journey and who also walks the wild, woolly, and sometimes sticky walk of early intervention with us. Sit back, relax, and watch out for all the squirrels and enjoy this geeky gig brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. Welcome back to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional resources for the pediatric clinician. I am your host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. The topic of today falls in the functional category, and we're talking all things National Down Syndrome Society and lobbying. Wait, what? What did Michelle just say? Or at least that's what I would say if I was on the listening end. That would be what's running through my mind. Now, you heard me correct. Lobbying and the National Down Syndrome Society. Okay, you're thinking, how does that relate to what I'm doing in early intervention or working with the pediatric population? Well, folks, that's an easy answer. These little ones grow up. I am proud to share that I have a special needs brother-in-law, and that sweet man is almost 42 years old. His birthday is kind of a day before mine, so we have a joint birthday cake. Now, to be honest, he does not have Down syndrome, but he does have multiple diagnoses, including autism, flaccid cerebral palsy, a cortical vision impairment, and an intellectual disability. What I have found is that since he entered my life 8.5 years ago, it changed me as a clinician for the better. It shaped me to reframe all of my therapy sessions from a functional ADL or activities of daily living driven mindset. As again, these little ones that we treat, they do grow up. Okay, so how does that correlate to lobbying in the National Down Syndrome Society? Well, a few months ago, I had the pleasure of traveling to DC to share my live lecture series, and I got to meet my little brother's gal. Now, my little brother ain't so little, as he's well over 6 feet tall, and he's kind of sort of the reason why I'm an SLP, but that's a fun cleft lip story for another day. So he showed up to dinner that night with a beautiful jet-lagged, brilliant brunette who had just wrapped a lobbying conference in LA, and I fell in love with her immediately. This fabulous Miss Nicole Patton was the full package. Beautiful and vivacious, despite like one heck of jet lag on a flight home. I would not look like that after I got off of a flight. And she's passionate about the advancement and inclusion of special needs. And she has a laugh loud enough to rival my own, and that's really saying something. And I love that. So, like all good things in life, after dinner and a glass or two of mommy juice, we, like all professionals who love their careers, kind of started talking work, and one thing led to another, and I may or may not have begged her to share the National Down Syndrome Society's current advocacy and lobbying efforts on First Bite, not only to raise awareness, but also, and kind of sort of more importantly, to raise people to action. Folks, it's not enough to know about a group and a mission, but you have to get up and get involved to see that mission actually make it to fruition. So, on that tiny soapbox note, Nicole, how are you? How's my sweet baby brother? I mean, he's still deployed, but how are you? And how did you actually end up being a lobbyist? Because I'm dying to know that.
Yes, your brother, as far as I'm aware, is doing well. I spoke to him this morning. But can I tell you a funny story about how he told me he got the scar above his lip? Because I had a feeling, but, I don't want to assume, of course. So I had asked him, I was like, oh, how did you get your scar? And he goes, wildebeest. They came ravaged at me. And he was, it was like, I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, the mountain lions had gotten me. It was in a story in the local newspaper. And I was like, are you kidding? And he goes, no, I'm serious. And we had that conversation for a good 5 minutes because I am so gullible that I went with it. I was like, okay. He told me. I was like, oh, great. It would have been much, much better if you had told me earlier on. But whatever. I know you like to play with the fact that I'm gullible.
Yeah. I can see Eefy Man doing that. Yeah. He definitely didn't talk till he was 4, and he had a cleft of his lip, and he's got the cutest pictures of his repair work. But on a side note, did he ever tell you about the time we duct taped him to the side of the house?
No, he did not.
Okay, that one happened. The wildebeest did not. The duct tape did. And everybody was like, Michelle duct taped her brother to the house. Nope. Our other brother duct taped this brother to the house. But we kind of sat around and filmed it until we realized he was choking. But anyways, squirrel number 1 of the day. Okay, so how did you get involved in lobbying and specifically the National Down Syndrome Society?
Yeah, so I got started with NDSS back in May of 2017. At this time, I was working at a state senator's office in Brooklyn. And I was doing mostly, working with constituents, scheduling and legislative stuff. I was one of his legislative aides, and had thought, my passion has always been with disability. My youngest brother is autistic. He's 15. He is the highlight of my whole life, and I've always wanted to advocate for individuals with disabilities because, I believe that they're not given their fair shot in the world and in society. So that's when I had, when I at that time was looking for, just kind of browsing around. I had thought maybe I want to go to DC, maybe I want to stay in New York. I haven't really decided yet, but I stumbled across an opportunity for the NDSS, and they had posted their director of government relations position. And I was like, I'm not really qualified for this, but I'll apply anyway and see how that goes.
I love yes, got it. Gumption, baby. You have your muchness. Own it.
I mean, what was the worst that was going to happen? They were going to say, no, you're not qualified for this, or I would never hear from them again. So, let's see how that works out. But I had applied and they had reached back out to me and they said, hi, we love your application. But we're looking for a little bit more experience with at least our director position. But how about this position of manager of grassroots advocacy? And I said, that also sounds amazing, and absolutely something I would love to be a part of. I love, engaging with the community. That was one of my favorite parts about working at my old job was, I sat right front and center where all of the in and out of action came, through the state legislator's office. And honestly, they're a lot busier than you would expect, especially in the district that I had worked in. So, that was one of my favorite things to do, was talk to them. And, I went to school for political science. I got my degree in American and urban politics. So, that was right along the lines of everything I kind of wanted to encompass in a position, I kind of got from this manager of grassroots advocacy position. It's the policy, it's, the outreach, it's the legislation and, everything put together into one. So that it really excited me that, they wanted me to be a part of that. So that's kind of how I got started there. I don't have a direct relationship to the Down syndrome community. I've maybe, now working with a staff that is 25% Down syndrome, really hadn't come across a lot of people with Down syndrome in, my lifetime. There's a really high rate of autism on Staten Island. So that was something I was always kind of involved in, until working at NDSS. So yeah, kind of just rambled on for 15 minutes, but that's fine.
No, that's okay. In truth, I thought, maybe it was mommy juice, but I thought your little brother had Down syndrome. But now I remember the rest of the story from that lovely evening. And yes, I am with you. And it makes those of you that have a loved one that has special needs in your life, I have found it makes me fight a little harder, if that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. It's that personal connection behind the issue that you're fighting for that gives you that little extra drive. And I've noticed that a lot with a lot of our advocates at NDSS, and we call them DS ambassadors, which is the name of our grassroots. Our grassroots program is called the NDSS DS Ambassador Group, and all of our ambassadors are called DS ambassadors, and they're the ones who kind of facilitate that communication and build those relationships with members. But a lot of them are moms, dads, siblings, maybe aunts, uncles, grandparents who want to get involved, but have that direct relationship. And it definitely lights the fire for them because of that personal touch that comes with, being involved with advocacy.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I have a million questions for you. So technically it's only 4, but it feels like a million because my mind is racing. So if you're ready, we're going to get started. All right. So what are the current legislative agendas for the National Down Syndrome Society as it pertains to early intervention or access to home-based services for our medically fragile students? And I'm including speech therapy here, but it could be for, overlap with other services.
Yeah. So currently, our ultimate goal at NDSS2 is to make sure that home and community-based services are an option all across the United States. We believe that it's vital, to the well-being and, the life of a person, and people with Down syndrome, that they have access to those vital benefits that will, really push them forward to having the most, the most fulfilling life while still being able to work and have, benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. Medicaid, Medicaid is one way to pay for services such as speech language pathology, speech therapy, and OT and PT. So one of the things that we're looking to advance is the Advancing Care for Exceptional Kids Act, and that is it'll address some obstacles in regards to state-based Medicaid programs.
Okay, what is this thing called? Say this again. It's called
the Advancing Care for Exceptional Kids, abbreviated to ACE Kids Act.
I've never heard of this. What is this?
Yes. So, according to NIH, at least one half of all children with Down syndrome have some kind of a co-occurring condition. Leukemia, congenital heart disease, sleep apnea, seizure disorders, thyroid issues, et cetera. Celiac is another one that we'll probably be talking about a little bit later. And because of these complex medical conditions, it becomes really costly for families to be able to access that specialized care that they need. And sometimes the best option for those families is to get those, to get those services out of state. And because of current Medicaid rules, it could limit their coordinated care options. So what the ACE would plan to do, the ACE Kids Act would plan to do, is make those options available for individuals with Down syndrome and other intellectual developmental disabilities, so they can use their Medicaid waiver in other states.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
Wait, let me fix that. I can hear my 6-year-old now. Oh my gosh, be respectful, mommy. That would change so many kids' stars. You just rattled off a couple kids on my caseload that I would love nothing more than to send to CHOP or to Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and insurance isn't accepted.
Yeah. And that's what's so hard too, is with families, is that, they'll have maybe their primary insurance, or they'll have their secondary insurance, which is Medicaid, but not all of the times, like, their insurance is going to be able to cover it, or Medicaid may not be able to cover it, or if they need to go and get that care, that specialized care, let's say you are in South Carolina, but there is a, congenital heart. I'm just, I'm saying a hypothetical, but in North Carolina, there's a congenital heart specialist that could really, really help this condition. Like, the family would have to pay for all those costs out of pocket, because their insurance probably won't cover it, and neither will Medicaid.
Okay, so where does this bill sit? Where are we in this process?
So we were so close, and we were so disappointed, because in the last Congress we were at that kind of final push, but it just and it passed overwhelmingly in the House. It was like 400 yes votes and 11 nay votes. So we were super close, and then it just didn't get enough votes in the Senate for it to go to the floor. And we were really disheartened by it. But we hear word on Capitol Hill that it's going to be reintroduced sometime very soon, as of today when we're recording this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this will, I want updates. Please keep me updated.
Yes, of course, I will.
And if this comes to fruition, did you guys have like a date tied with it? Like, I know some of the bills that like we've worked at our state level, we have like a go date of like January 1, 2020. Do y'all have a preliminary start date tied to it, or is that yet to be determined?
It depends on if they're going to keep the exact language of the bill, as it was in last Congress, as it will be in this Congress. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Oh man. Okay. All right. Well then, that will most definitely fight for our tiny humans. And I would be so grateful for that to pass, because I would love for my kids to have second opinions. I mean, okay. All right. I like this. Good fight. Yay. Well done, you. All right. So the next one. In light of the increase in dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism spectrum disorders, does the National Down Syndrome Society support the use of speech therapy and ABA services? All right. So there, you get a fair warning shot here, because this is kind of a trigger question amongst the world of speech pathologists, because we honestly regularly struggle with the scope of practice encroachment with ABA therapists into speech therapy scope. And I will say this, and I hear everybody like getting their Rotten Tomatoes ready now. I humbly and strongly feel that both services are needed and that we should do co-treatments together. And I understand everybody that just nodded their head and had all of that commotion go through their brain. When it's done right, the SLPs and ABA therapists working together can make beautiful things happen. But I am well aware that it doesn't always happen that way. So on that note, do y'all in the National Down Syndrome Society have current numbers on the prevalence of Down syndrome and autism spectrum disorders as a dual diagnosis?
Yeah, so I think the current number of dual diagnoses with Down syndrome and ASD is about 5 to 10%. And, children with Down syndrome have displayed those maladaptive behaviors, elopement, task refusal, inattentiveness, and obsessive compulsive routines.
Self-injurious behaviors. I see that a lot as like the first red flag, like the head hitting. And I have one little one who's very aggressive on his tiny man parts. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad I don't have that problem anymore. In my previous life, before DC, I worked at a day hab for adults with autism, and there was definitely lots of aggressive behaviors like that. So, I personally, as somebody who had given ABA therapy, see the positives in it as well. But NDSS, we believe that families should work on building a team of healthcare professionals and therapists and educators who are interested in promoting the child's best possible outcomes.
Best possible outcomes from a team. See, it's not an us or a them in the line. It's a team. Sorry, squirrel. I got excited.
No. It's totally fine. But yeah, and that's up to that's the family's, best, whatever the family believes is going to be the best practices for them, and making sure that whatever approach that they take should be backed by research and science as well.
You work in DC. I'm just wondering how much actual science versus pseudoscience is floating around those corridors right now. But that's a conversation for a different podcast. So,
yeah.
Well, that one. Yeah. Okay, I have to say, I'm surprised. I really thought the prevalence was higher than that. So, because, I have a couple of kiddos on my caseload, and I feel like I saw somewhere it was, 10 to as high as 25%, but I can't place that. But 5 to 10%, absolutely. And I should have asked you about the prevalence of individuals with Down syndrome and apraxia, but that slipped my mind because I was focused on the autism. So, next time. This podcast is brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. SpeechTherapyPD.com is an engaging, evidence-based continuing education site that offers over 450 continuing education hours. The best part? The information garnered can be applied in therapy immediately. It's functional and fabulous without the hassle of trying to translate technical jargon from a research article. Can I entice you more? Well, then get your suntan lotion ready, because next summer, SpeechTherapyPD.com is hosting a CEU cruise. That's right. July 27th through August 3rd of 2019, the amazing, delightful, and oh so kind Shar Boshart, MA-CCC SLP, will be the featured speaker for 12 plus continuing education hours on a cruise ship through Greece. That's right. You heard it right. Greece. Want to get the preview or want to catch a preview of the information she's going to share? Then tune into her pod course, The Speech Link, which is also eligible for continuing education through SpeechTherapyPD.com. Maybe, oh just maybe, I'll see y'all in Greece. Okay. All right. Now, I got a case. And you and I have kind of sort of started the volleying on this one. All right. So let me ask the question, give the story, and then come back to the question. Okay. So my next question is moving into the area of celiac. And this is one that's near and dear to my heart. I have a little kiddo. I've had the pleasure of working with a family for the last year. And this little one has Down syndrome. She had congenital heart defect, laryngomalacia. She's had hypertrophy of her adenoids. She also has Hirschsprung's disease. Folks, if you're not familiar with Hirschsprung's disease is where theoretically the last 2 to 5% of your large intestines is not innervated. Now, I have seen that impact as far up that it goes into the small intestines, and the surgical procedure for to address it, it's called a pull through. So what they do is they cut out and they remove the part of the large intestines, and if it goes that high up into the small intestines, they cut out the part that's missing the innervation because it prevents the child from stooling, and then they pull the healthy tissue down, and they have to recreate, for lack of a better phrase, they have to recreate a sphincter and like a colon. Most of these children temporarily, some of them permanently, have to have colostomy bags. And so it's a pretty invasive surgery. And this cute little bitty booger butt, she had Hirschsprung's and had the pull through and the procedures. And I started working with her after she moved to South Carolina. And she had all these PO refusals. She didn't want to eat. She was throwing her food. And she'd had a lot of what I like to refer to as chewy tube therapy, where they place the Z-Vibes and the plastic chewies in their mouth to try to get them to chew. And I was like, this is going to go nowhere because this is something else. And she was also having a lot of vomiting with food. So on one of our hospital stays, I said, all right, Mama, here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask them for a biopsy because I had requested through a pediatrician, and the pediatrician was in disagreement. I honestly thought the kid had EOE. I did not think it was going to come back as anything other than EOE, eosinophilic esophagitis. And sure enough, that biopsy came back and the baby had celiac disease. And all the food she was refusing to eat had gluten in it. So she would take the food and she was chucking it because she didn't have the vocabulary, either via verbal or the combination with sign, to convey her emotions around the food because she's still, 2. And we're still in amassing functional language at the stage of the game. So we went gluten-free, family went gluten-free, and she started rapid fire healing and wanting to eat, which was all fine and dandy, except the family's income for most of their grocery bills are provided by SNAP benefits. And so Mom ran into a predicament where SNAP benefits do not cover gluten-free foods. So I took it to our state association and said, hey, we've got this problem. This isn't the only child with feeding therapy and oral pharyngeal dysphagia that has celiac disease. How can we fight in the state of South Carolina to have gluten-free foods added to SNAP benefits? So our lobbyist, who's amazing, also has like all the pretty clothes. She looks like she walked off a runway like every single day of the week. So you lobbyists and your amazing wardrobes. She ran it as far up as she could here in South Carolina to, lo and behold, find out that this was an issue at the federal level. And we hit a glitch. So that's when I reached out to you. But it started before we could go into like the resolution. We had the problem where, okay, so what's the prevalence of celiac disease and Hirschsprung's disease in children that have Down syndrome? That's a lot.
The first thing I wanted to notice too about the lobbyist thing was I'm not the most fashionable, but our president and CEO, that's been doing, Sarah Hartweir, her name is, that has been doing this for eons, is honestly one of the most fashionable people I've ever met. Like I don't know how she's running a mile a minute all the time, and she looks fabulous doing it every time. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's something to do with it, honey. I've seen the pictures of y'all's gala. You've got it. Rock
Don't
it,
flatter me. Don't flatter me. I whipped my hair. You couldn't tell via recording, but that's what I just did.
I love it. We'll have to make sure that he leaves the hair flippage in there.
Oh,
yes.
God. Back to your question. celiac disease, for I guess those who don't know, is when the body is unable to properly digest barley, rye, and wheat. So that will damage the lining of the intestines and prevent the absorption of nutrition. Certain nutrients, I should say. We believe we have the numbers up to 16% of individuals with Down syndrome are believed to have celiacs. Because it is really high amongst people with Down syndrome, we recommend that, all infants between the ages of 2 and 3 be screened for celiac.
Wait, stop. I had no idea about that.
Hmm?
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
You recommend there's a practice policy on this.
This is the recommendation as per our Science and Clinical Advisory Board, who has done all of the research on this, and that's what they believe, is that everybody should, between the ages of 2 and 3, get that simple. It's a simple blood test to screen for celiac. So I hope that families are doing that. If they have a child that has Down syndrome, so that way, if you catch, as with early intervention, if you catch it early on, you can prevent a lot of damage in the future.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea that was a practice policy or a guideline or a recommendation or whatever the technical term is. Okay. We got to do a better job about getting the word out on that one down here in the South. So my brain's firing on that one. Okay. Do you have anything on Hirschsprung's disease?
Yes. So with regards to Hirschsprung's disease, I think the estimate right now between 2 to 15% of infants with Down syndrome, and that can cause part of their large intestine to not function properly.
All right, so to tie this into the world of early intervention, folks, you would assume that children that have Down syndrome would, and babies in general, would be asked to make sure that they poop before they go home from the hospital. But let's look at the families that we treat Monday through Friday. A lot of these families have multiple other children, and moms are stressed. Sometimes they're single parents, and they've got to get home to take care of those kids. So if you've ever had surgery and or given birth, the nurse comes in and says, "Did you have a bowel movement?" And, I distinctly remember one time saying, "Best bowel movement ever, greatest poop ever. Now can I go home?" Because they need to know that you pooped. It's like the last check on a mystery box before you get out of the hospital, right? And constipation tends to run hand in hand with our little ones that have Down syndrome, whether it's driven by hypothyroidism, the hypotonia, delayed gastric emptying, delayed GI motility, all of the GERD medicines that they're on that can cause constipation, and or the sugar-based formulas that these kiddos are taking that can also cause constipation. So stooling is a problem. So a lot of these kiddos don't get the diagnosis of Hirschsprung's right away. It can be several weeks to several months that these children are having all of these negative associations with food, because babies are smart. What goes in must come out. And over time, as they start backing up and having to have more suppositories or rectal stimulations or dilations or whatever medications they're put on to have a bowel movement, they associate that with what's going in their mouth. And you're laying the groundwork for PO refusals and odynophagia or odynophagia, painful to swallow, because they're fighting, it's aggressive. All of these things are correlated back to the Catucus, for lack of a better phrase. So, I feel really strongly on this because there's so much going on. Okay, all right. So we got our numbers, we got our data. You guys have a position statement or best practice guidelines that all children between 2 and 3 should be screened for celiac. So what do we do about our sweet babies getting gluten-free foods on a national level?
Honestly, it's a discriminatory practice for them not to be able to get the foods that they need because of how high and prevalent celiac is. It's not that fun trendy diet phase. This affects people's diet and life and their nutrition, and you can't expect a family who doesn't have the means to be able to just.
No, it's super frustrating because that was almost verbatim the feedback that we got here at the state. They were like, "What, that fad diet, the gluten-free foods?" And I'm like, no. This is not a fad diet. This is the patient has celiac disease. It's an autoimmune issue, and if the child eats food with gluten in it, she has adverse reactions, and it's a health condition. And that was our problem. But it's raising awareness because folks think it's up there with the keto diet. People think if they go on the ketogenic diet, they're going to lose all this weight. The ketogenic diet was founded for seizure management. So when anybody tells me that they're an adult, they're like, yeah, I'm doing the keto diet. I was like, so how are your seizures being managed right now? And they're like looking at me like I'm speaking Greek. And I'm like, honey, you and I think that's, there's a misfire. But okay, yes. So if folks have a little one that has Down syndrome and also has celiac disease on their caseload, how can they, and if they get SNAP benefits, how do they proceed? How can they help this?
So my recommendation would be filing a complaint, especially because, we want to be able to change this at the national level, and, we're going to be working towards doing that. But I would recommend filing a complaint with whatever the agency is in the state, because they all have really funky names, that handles, SNAP benefits, and filing a complaint with the Department of Agriculture as well, because we need to be able to make sure that these individuals, people with Down syndrome, get the food that they're able to eat, and a discriminatory practice that prevents them from being able to get gluten-free foods that they so desperately
Perfect.
need.
Okay, so there it is, folks. File a complaint with the Department of Agriculture. At our state level, we filed a complaint. Oh, our lobbyist took it up to, I think it was, wasn't DDSN. I'm trying to think. It'll come to me about 3:00 tomorrow morning who we filed the complaint with. But it's whoever's in charge of issuing the SNAP benefits, whoever signs that check off in your state, that's who you need to lodge complaints with. Also, take it to your state associations. All right. You want to take it to your state speech pathology association, your state, if you're an OT, your state occupational therapy association, get them involved. Something else that we had come up, and something that you had recommended to me in an email, was reaching out to and I didn't know this, there's local chapters for the Down Syndrome Society.
Yeah, so NDSS has over 375 affiliates internationally. We work with those local groups. We provide them with resources, and, materials that they would need. A lot of these local folks, kind of know more so of what's available within, everybody's state. So I focus a lot on the national level of, advocacy and public policy, but I also do a lot of state work as, a state policy as well. But sometimes it's just the federal government in and of itself is just so much. So, we really rely on the local communities to, be a part of our advocacy efforts.
I don't know if anybody out there reading or listening read the new article about the ASHA president. Our ASHA president, because she just came into her position, she wrote an article and she called all of us to action. She said, hey, from a speech pathology perspective, ASHA can issue a practice statement. This is what we should be doing, or this is a new certificate, or we're working on like interstate compact at this level. But it's the state level that changes it. And this is one of those things where this is a federal law, but the states can drive the change, kind of, I guess, beating of the drums to actually hold our legislators accountable for wanting to change that federal policy. So it works in reverse. It's not top down. This time it's bottom up. So bottoms up.
Correct. Yeah. And but that's the weird thing too is, even so with regards to, that whole idea of federal policies and making sure that they're enforced at the state level, it's an ADA violation to discriminate against somebody. And I want to bring this up too, because it was my colleague, Charlotte's 7th heart anniversary, we call it, of her heart transplant, because she had a heart abnormality when she was young, when she was a baby. So we just celebrated her 7th anniversary of a heart transplant. So we have, there's a practice, with the ADA, you can't discriminate against individuals because of their disability on receiving, healthcare. We're seeing that a family, most recently, the Wellman family, who also just celebrated their 1-year anniversary of James's kidney transplant, James was denied a kidney transplant because his IQ was too low.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And that wasn't something I was aware of prior to my work at NDSS either, that people are being discriminated against because of their IQ being too low. Everybody deserves a life-saving transplant. I just don't understand how that's a thing, but it is. And even with a federal law such as the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is one of the most significant pieces of legislation for people with disabilities in the last 50 years, people aren't getting the life-saving organs that they need because of their IQ. And we think that's absolutely ridiculous. Another discriminatory practice we're trying to get rid of, is that.
That's horrible. And my heart hurts for them. I mean, not, you know what I mean? We're talking about hearts and kidneys, but like I had no idea every human has the right to experience joy to the fullest. That's okay. That's why there's folks like us out there that are fighters. So calling all fighters.
Here's your call to action. Please come help.
They're going to be like, oh man, that poor brother, that poor family. Honey, my whole family is women filled like this. And we have very strong husbands and opinionated children. Samantha Ann.
To say the least.
I know. I'm thinking of my 6-year-old niece, Samantha Ann. Man, she'll be first woman president, I do believe. And she'll ninja tap you if she doesn't get a vote. Okay. All right. So my last question, because I have to be respectful of our time and I want to make sure that we're not too far off on time. All right. So my last question. What are the general initiatives that the National Down Syndrome Society is lobbying for at a national level for individuals with Down syndrome? What are the general ones? And then after we go through them, what can we do? What can the practitioners that are listening do?
Yes. So currently our overall mission at NDSS, specifically our Advocacy and Public Policy Center, is to end Law syndrome. And I know everybody's like, what's Law syndrome? What?
Never even heard of this. I thought you misspoke there for a second. But
no. So we believe at NDSS that people with Down syndrome aren't, held back by their disability, but rather they're held back by these archaic and outdated laws, that prevent them from being able to be fully included in society without the risk of losing, vital government benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. So, NDSS was one of the leading organizations, who really led the effort on passing the ABLE Act, the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, which would allow individuals with disabilities to be able to save money in a tax-free savings account without that money going towards their benefits. So this, that is something, we continue to want to advocate and spread awareness about as ABLE accounts.
Came up in South Carolina. There was some change down here to the ABLE accounts down here because, we just signed the paperwork from my brother-in-law. So when the time's right, he'll come to us. But that changes what we can save, the total volume that we can save. It was increased drastically, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, and that was a federal policy that we worked on as well, which is the Able to Work Act. So if you're working, if you're a person with a disability who has an ABLE account, and you're working, you can now save up to the federal poverty line, in addition to the $15,000 that is the annual gift limit. So I think the federal poverty line is somewhere between $1,260 and like $1,140, because there are multiple poverty lines. The federal poverty line, I think in Alaska, is higher than it is, let's say in New York or in South Carolina, as it is in, I believe in Hawaii too, it's higher. So yeah, that was a federal law that we worked, really tirelessly on to get passed, and that was included in the tax reform bill last year, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So that, now you can save up to about $27,000 a year in an ABLE account, and that money is not going to go towards, having assets, unless you, so drastically go above that $15,000 plus $12,000 limit, or the lifetime limit varies over states. So some ABLE accounts have a lifetime limit of $100,000, or some of them are within $300,000. So as long as you're not going above those limitations, you are able to save that money. And that is, money to, for transportation to your job. That's money towards an apartment. That's money towards, that independence that people with Down syndrome and developmental disabilities really, really, really want, but they can't have because of these laws. Another initiative that we're working on to eliminate is subminimum wage. So people with Down syndrome and other developmental disabilities can legally be paid a wage less than the federal minimum wage. And we've seen these wages be sometimes as low as 3 pennies on the dollar, 3 cents, 30 cents an hour for doing work that, people will do anyway. People do anyway. Like, that has to be done. And yet they're getting paid 30 cents an hour. The only other population on earth who gets paid like that low is prisoners.
Yeah, third world countries. I mean, we're not a third world country.
This is America, They're doing real work, and they should be getting real wages for that work. So, there was a bill last Congress that we supported called the TIME Act, which was the Transitioning to Integrated and Meaningful Employment Act. Unfortunately, the main sponsor of the bill, Greg Harper, he has since retired from Congress. So we're currently working with other legislators, other members of the House and Senate to, reintroduce a bill to eliminate subminimum wage, so that providers who do apply for those certificates, sorry, I should also explain that too. The reason why they're able to pay people with disabilities subminimum wages is because of the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act. Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act says that employers can obtain a certificate from the Department of Labor to pay people with disabilities subminimum wage. And
was that actually from 1938?
From 1938,
That's
yeah.
about time that got addressed then. A lot has changed in America since 1938. This is what should be fixed.
Yeah, I would hope so. And I mean, this is the thing, too, that we're trying to say is, how can a law from 1938 still be in practice? It's crazy.
There's a law in South Carolina that's still on the books that on the first Sunday of every month, you take a 1-inch switch to your wife on the state capitol and beat her, should you please so. And it's still a law. Not that the domestic abuse survivor that's on this side of the podcast is a little upset about that one, but it's okay. It's still there. Maybe time is yours.
You almost have to laugh to kind of get through a lot of these things that I hear about, or just stuff going on. You need to laugh about it, because it's there's no other way. There's just, unless you join the good fight and come and be a part of the movement.
Yes, there it is, us and our. And there's a lot of people on this podcast enjoying our the call to actions, and poster boards and glitter glues. I am your friend. All right, time for poster boards and glitter glues. Okay, so this thing's from 1938. You're working to get that one repealed, and you're still trying. Are you working on still getting a sponsor for this bill?
So we are working with representatives. There's talks of a bill, planning to be introduced soon. The details are to come about that, though. So, we always want to fine tooth comb everything that, we support. So, I believe that a bill is going to be introduced relatively soon on addressing subminimum wage, but I'm not 100% sure what the language yet looks like. Okay. So stay tuned on that.
Stay tuned. Absolutely. Okay. Are there any other exciting tidbits that we're advocating for?
Other legislation we're working on, too, is addressing marriage penalty. So currently, when you get married, you have, I'm not married, so I don't really know. But apparently, so I've heard that when you get married, your incomes become combined, which could then put you in a different tax bracket, which means that for people who have Down syndrome and other disabilities, when they get married and their incomes become combined, they now are at risk of, again, jeopardizing benefits. So we're working on legislation that's going to address that marriage penalty for people with Down syndrome and other intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Does that legislation have a name yet?
Not yet. It's in the works. And it's going to be introduced relatively soon. We just got sponsors on the bill very recently. So they're going to be introducing it soon.
Oh my gosh, I can hear the joy in your voice. Okay. All right. I just have to ask, is there one piece of legislation since you've been there that just stands out and you're just like so proud that this has come to fruition? Is there something that just like, you're like, yeah, we did it?
Oh gosh. So one bill that the reason why this one particularly comes to mind is because I was given a small shout out on the House of Representatives floor when this bill, and I worked with, my esteemed colleagues, Ashley and Vince and Sarah. Sarah's the CEO, Vince is our public policy advisor, and Ashley is our director of government relations. We worked and got this bill through the House, and it recently became law right before Congress ended last session. And the main sponsor on that bill was Gus Bilirakis. It addresses congenital heart defects, so it's the Futures of Congenital Heart Reauthorization Act. That bill is going to provide funding to spread awareness and promote research on congenital heart disease.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, honey, I was totally watching all your Instagram posts and was just like, yes, baby girl, yes. And so I just love your joy in it. Okay. Because I have to be conscientious of our time, first and foremost, Nicole, thank you. I mean, not just for dating my brother, but also for coming on the podcast today. And I mean, seriously, the work that you guys are doing the patients that we treat are going to benefit from it. And I am grateful because I know what it's like to have a good righteous fight, and it's wearisome on the body, but to know that you're not alone and that there's others out there that are doing this and fighting for good. Thank you. So, to all the people that are there that do it with you. I mean, if you were local, I'd bake chocolate chip cookies, but you're not. So I'm sending you happy, fuzzy thoughts through the internet.
Well, if you're in DC again, feel free to drop by anytime that you want. So yes, the door is always open.
And you have to take me to that throwing axe place because that was awesome.
Oh, yes. Kraken Axes is apparently they just opened up a spot up 2.5 blocks from our office. So I cannot wait to go do that again.
I'm just thinking y'all get that marriage bill passed and that one on celiac fixed, and then I will travel up there and throw an axe and buy around. So, yay!
Working on it. We're handling it.
And done. Okay, so just thank you so much. And again, if somebody out there has been inspired, where do you recommend if they're inspired and they want to support National Down Syndrome Society, where do you recommend that they reach out to start on that adventure?
So you can reach out to us at policy@ndss.org. That is, our general policy inbox. We run our grassroots program. So if you guys are interested in being a part of that movement, email us. I will probably be the one to reach out to you. So, if anybody wants to get involved, do not hesitate to reach out. Visit our website, ndss.org. We have tons and tons of information there. Come to our Buddy Walk on Washington, which is our annual Hill Day. We do a federal advocacy training. We're going to probably bring back the state advocacy training stuff next year. So if you guys want to get a background on DC from the first registered lobbyist, Kayla McKeon with Down syndrome, come out to DC and, come join us. It's my favorite day of the year, probably, honestly.
That's awesome. Yes, we have a couple of different advocacy days down here, and we have Special Needs Advocacy Day, and this year they moved it up to March. And I am so excited because it's a blast.
Oh God, it's who would have thought that lobbying would be so much fun? Honestly,
I got to tell you, I had a panic attack my last semester of undergrad and was like, I think I should be a lawyer. And my daddy told me flat out, baby girl, you are meant to be a speech pathologist. And then I got into it and I realized, hey, we can still be advocates as speech pathologists. And yeah, and it's cool because we're doing it. Nicole, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much for all y'all's work and for staying late in your office so that we could share this. But seriously, keep up the good work and thank you.
Michelle, for you, anything. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy that I was able to, kind of chat with you about everything that we're doing at NDSS.
Yeah, you're making the world better, dude. So.
Trying one day at a time.
Yep. All right, hold tight. I'm going to switch the lines, okay?
Okay.
That's a wrap, folks. Once again, thank you for listening to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional. I am your humble but yet sassy host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. This podcast is part of a course offered for continuing education through speechtherapypd.com. Please check out the website if you'd like to learn more about CEU opportunities for this episode, as well as the ones that are archived. And as always, remember, feed your mind, feed your soul, be kind, and feed those babies.